It's shrouded in myth and legend as the first true assault rifle. Obviously, I'm talking about the Sturmgewehr 44. First of all, I want to clarify the name, since many call it Sturmgewehr 44, while others call it Maschinenpistole 44. And both are correct, because this weapon changed its name not just twice, but actually 4 times, while remaining essentially the same, for reasons that I will now tell you about. The idea of using a so-called intermediate cartridge was born right after the First World War. Full-power cartridges are a bit excessive. These are weapons that can kill up to 2 kilometers away. Most firefights take place under 300 meters. So carrying an excessively powerful and heavy round is a bit of a waste of material. It's a bit of a waste of weight, because for the same weight, I can carry a lot more small rounds compared to large ones. So the concept of the intermediate cartridge spreads pretty much everywhere, because it's a middle ground between a pistol and a full-power rifle. The Americans themselves would probably be the biggest users of an intermediate cartridge during World War II. The M1 carbine essentially uses what we can define as an intermediate round. The Soviets themselves would develop a very famous intermediate round, which in their idea would replace all the weapons they had at that time, the infantry. But the ones who are remembered as the real users, and above all, the inventors of the intermediate cartridge and the concept of the assault rifle, are the Germans. As I already mentioned to you, since the 1930s there have been experimental works to first create a cartridge and then a weapon. To clarify which comes first, the chicken or the egg, for weapons the cartridge comes before the weapon. Obviously, the outbreak of the war on one hand stops all these experiments. Many nations were already trying to adopt a semi-automatic rifle. The Soviets almost got there with the Samozaryadnaya Vintovka Tokareva 38, the Samozaryadnaya Vintovka Tokareva 40, which would never replace the Mosin. The only ones who really succeeded were the Americans. Despite the war, German research work, like in every nation, continues. On one hand, they try to aim for a strict semi-automatic battle rifle. For the Germans, it will first be the G41 and then the G43. In the meantime, however, this concept of an intermediate cartridge and a universal weapon continues. The idea that a weapon can do everything that the others do, that is, to be practically both a light machine gun, a submachine gun, and a battle rifle, continues. And the assault rifle is exactly this. A fundamental characteristic of the assault rifle is that it is reliable and has selective fire, meaning it can shoot both single shots and in automatic mode. In this way, it replaces both submachine guns and infantry rifles, whether they are bolt action or semi-automatic. The first versions of what would become the Sturmgewehr appeared in 1942 as the Maschinenkarabiner 42. One was produced by Enel, one by Walther. The one from Walther was not particularly successful, but the one from Enel showed quite a bit of promise. It looks very similar, if you see it from the outside, to a Sturmgewehr 44, easily recognizable. I'll show you an image here. The difference is mainly in the gas piston. It's a bit different here at the front. Another feature it has is that it operates with an open bolt firing cycle, unlike the Sturmgewehr, which has a closed bolt firing cycle. Hitler doesn't like the weapon and the idea. He basically orders to stop the development of this stupid concept, this automatic carbine, this Maschinenkarabiner, and to focus on more useful things. However, there's an important thing. Hitler is seen as this dictator who can do everything and controls everything. Up to a certain point in the war, the army often simply ignores him. Exactly, that's what they did with this weapon. He told them to stop developing it, and they just kept going as if nothing happened. Because the army knew that this concept could be a winning concept, many Maschinenkarabiner end up at the front, especially on the Eastern Front. And a subsequent iteration is developed, which, in a rather confusing way, is called the Maschinenpistole 43-1. The Maschinenpistole 43-1 already closely resembles this weapon I have here. A first modification made to the Maschinenpistole 43-1 is to change some features of the barrel, essentially the barrel of the Maschinenkarabiner 42 and the Maschinenpistole 43-1. It was too thick to accept several accessories that were useful, for example, in the Kar 98K. In particular, it couldn't accept accessories for launching rifle grenades. That's a pretty important tactical aspect. It was adapted for the barrel profile, leading to the creation of the Maschinenpistole 43. And that's very confusing, because the Maschinenpistole 43-1 comes before the Maschinenpistole 43. And it's still not clear why, because this designation kind of muddies the waters. But remember, the Maschinenpistole 43 comes after the Maschinenpistole 43-1, even though logically it should be the other way around. At the end of 43 and the beginning of 44, the Germans, for some German reason, decided to rename and reclassify pretty much all their weapons. So for example, the Gewehr 43 becomes the Karabiner 43. What's the difference? Absolutely none. And so, in the same way, the Maschinenpistole 43 becomes the Maschinenpistole 44. There is no mechanical difference between the Maschinenpistole 43 and the Maschinenpistole 44. They are literally identical. The only thing that changes is what's written on it. At a certain point, Hitler finds out and he's given a demonstration of this new weapon. And almost forgetting the fact that he hated it at first. He loves it, and wants to give it a name that's a bit more martial, a bit more Nazi. He calls it Sturmgewehr, assault rifle, instead of Maschinenpistole, which means machine pistole. It's not an automatic pistol. This is not a submachine gun. It's an assault rifle. And so the designation changes to Sturmgewehr 44, also abbreviated as Sturmgewehr 44. How do the Maschinenpistole 44 and Maschinenpistole 43 differ? Absolutely none, except for the name. To recap, we have 5 different names for 3 different weapons, machine carbine 42 in 2 versions. Let's be clear, the one from Walter is quite rare and didn't go anywhere. Next, we have the Maschinenpistole 43-1 that already closely resembles this weapon, except for the diameter of the cam. The Maschinenpistole 43, Maschinenpistole 44 and Sturmgewehr 44 are actually the same weapon with 3 different names. This is specifically a Maschinenpistole 44 marked as such. As I mentioned to you before, the idea behind this weapon was to replace all the weapons essentially used by the infantry. So that's how it's distributed, also because production starts, but it will never reach the numbers needed for the total use of this weapon. The correct idea for distributing it was not to give a few to each unit, but that each unit, or at least each company, would be armed with the same weapon. And that's how it's distributed. Only some troops, which we could consider a bit more elite, receive the Sturmgewehr in large numbers, while the others essentially continue to use the weapons that were previously available, the Maschinenpistole 40, the Kar 98, the Walther semi-automatic Gewehrs, and so on. The weapon, of course, will not change the course. Not of the war, because wars are not won with this kind of firearm, or rather they are not won by the individual firearm, but by production, by logistics. However, the concept of the assault rifle will remain a winning concept. And this idea that everyone is armed with the same weapon, which can do everything that both rifles and submachine guns do, remains to this day. Actually, this weapon is more advanced than the K, which was meant to replace submachine guns, not other weapons. I want to make it clear, as I already said in my video about the K, that this weapon and the Kalashnikov have nothing in common. And I want to emphasize that I'll show it to you when we open it. They may look similar at first glance, but they're not. They were created for different reasons. They originated in different contexts, they work in completely different ways, and they each have a whole set of features that make them completely different weapons. There are other weapons much more similar to the Sturmgewehr, which we never think about, yet they resemble it much more. First of all, the Fusil Automatique Léger, the Belgian Fusil Automatique Léger, which initially used the same ammunition and internally is very similar to this weapon. The way it opens, you'll see that it will remind you. For example, the recent Maschinenpistole, 5 or other weapons like the Armalite rifle, 15, which basically use almost the same system to disassemble it. Let me move the cameras. I'll show you up close how it works. Unfortunately, I have to tell you right away that I won't be able to shoot anything because first of all, it's worth a ton of money. Above all, this one is automatic, and just Google how much something like this costs at auction houses. We're talking $30,000 or more, literally the price of 2 compact cars. Second thing, I don't have the right ammunition to do it, unfortunately. Also because I just showed up at the shooting range today without warning. This time they only get me the ammunition when I'm looking for something rare. Not this time, unfortunately, and I don't think they would have let me shoot it regardless of the ammunition. The Sturmgewehr 44 is a selective fire assault rifle, meaning it can fire in both semi-automatic and automatic modes. It uses a 30-round detachable magazine released by pressing this large button on the left side. Pressing it releases the magazine. The ammunition is 8 Moskirts, also known as 7.92 x33. Almost all the controls are on the left side. First of all, we have a separate safety and fire selector. This button, which as you can see moves from one side to the other, allows me to select semi-automatic or automatic fire. If the button pops out on the right, it's automatic. On the left, it's semi-automatic. The safety is next to the trigger. On the left side, we also have the charging handle, which luckily is on the left side, much better than the automat Kalashnikovas on the right side. This, in my opinion, absolutely makes handling the weapon easier. I hate weapons that charge from the right side. As you can see, the stock is very much in line with the action. This helps control recoil, especially during automatic fire on the stock. We also have a compartment for a cleaning kit. Rear sight and front sight. Next are the piston and gas port. This part that many people don't actually know what it is what's called a stacking rod in English. That is, it's used to hook multiple weapons together, to stack them vertically and in field conditions so they stay upright and clean. It seems like a very strange thing, but it's literally only used for this. We also have an attachment for the belt, which on the other side attaches here to the stock. Disassembling it is very reminiscent of other weapons that came after it, and that's not a coincidence. The Maschinenpistole 44's evolution eventually led to the Fusil Automatique Léger, which is often overlooked. The Fusil Automatique Léger also opens similarly. On the other hand, Mauser tried to compete with this design with its own weapon called the Sturmgewehr 45. Another experimental weapon was the Jarrett 06H, from which all Heckler and Koch weapons are clearly derived. To proceed with disassembly, first remove the magazine. It also helps a bit if the hammer is cocked. As you can see, I'm cocking the weapon. This cover immediately opens, which prevents dirt from getting inside the action. If I operate the loading mechanism, or if the bolt fires on its own, this cover will open automatically. And here we can already see the bolt and the action much better, which we will now take out. To open it, we have a part to remove very similar to those on the R15. And here, you push it and it comes out, And this happens, as you can see, because you need to remove the stock, which has a bit of tension from this huge spring. So, a bit clumsily, it came out this way, the trigger group, otherwise it would fly off with the way it's loaded. We can proceed to remove the components of the bolt and the bolt carrier. Now we have the bolt. The bolt carrier. The bolt carrier is very simple. It's a piston. It's connected to the gas piston. This is obviously a long stroke piston integrated with the bolt carrier piece. This is perhaps the only part that vaguely resembles the automat Kalashnikova, even though its operation is completely different. Since it's a tilting bolt, you can see that there are two slanted surfaces on the bolt carrier that match up with two identical ones on the bolt. These surfaces force the bolt to lower and raise, causing it to tilt. In short, when the weapon is in this configuration, when it is open, when it moves forward and the bolt touches an end part, the bolt carrier makes it lower when the firing gases push the bolt carrier. It's hard for me to show it this way. But essentially, they make the rear of the bolt rise so it unlocks and can be pulled back to complete the weapon cycle. And it's an extremely simple concept that's used in weapons, like for example, the fusil automatique léger, but many other contemporary ones use this method. The first one that comes to mind is, for example, the VREN Mitra, the English light machine gun. It's a method that will fall out of use over time because it has inherent problems, for example, with accuracy. Since there's only one locking surface, over time, the components, let's say, always twist in the same direction. So a weapon that's used a lot with this system can have issues with accuracy rather than precision. Anyway, as you can see, it comes apart into just a few very simple pieces. This is the only one you could actually lose since it locks it in place. To reassemble it, just reverse the process. I want to insert everything, the bolt with the bolt carrier, which needs to go in nicely aligned here with all the parts. Here it is. The gas piston needs to go in properly. Once this is done, we can put the large recoil spring back in. It's quite stiff. That goes inside the stock. Something that reminds the more experienced a lot of the R15, which also uses a spring in the stock. Let's close here. And hoping it doesn't go off, I hold it, I put it back here, the piece that holds everything together. And the weapon works, the Storm. Gear, as you have seen, is a winning idea. Today, everyone uses a weapon that in concept is derived from this one. Some in their mechanics or in certain details, not the main part for sure, and it absolutely remains a legendary weapon that is still used even today. I don't know if you know, but a few years ago in Syria, a lot of them showed up. Nobody really knows how or where. But there are a lot of pictures, I'll show you a couple here, of Syrian fighters who still use it today. It's the only weapon from World War I that still isn't obsolete today. And that's saying a lot. Thank you for watching this video. See you next time. See you next time.